Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. If you don't know who I am, my name's Aisha. I'm a lawyer, I'm an entrepreneur, and today we're going to be discussing everything becoming a lawyer. So how I became a lawyer, where I went to school, the path that I took, and I'm going to be answering a few questions that I got on TikTok and on Instagram. So let's start with where I went to school, the path that I took, and then we can go into the rest of the questions, because I think just talking about how I got to where I am is going to be answering most of the questions. Before I get started, I want to mention that I am in Quebec, Canada. This is where I grew up, this is where I went to school, and the Quebec educational system is a little bit different compared to the schooling system in other provinces, so just keep that in mind. All right, so how did I become a lawyer? I've always wanted to be a lawyer. I've known from a very young age that I wanted to be a lawyer. So when I graduated high school, I knew, or at least I had a pretty good idea of where I was going to study and what I was going to study. So when I graduated high school, I went to CEGEP, which, if you're not from Quebec, this might sound weird to you, but between high school and university, which is your college basically, we have a couple of years in between, so usually 2 or 3 years depending on the program that you take. And once you're done with CEGEP, then you can go on to university or law school. So I went to Dawson College for CEGEP, and I ended up enrolling into a program that I think is still called Law, Society, and Justice. The only reason why I really enrolled into that program is because I knew that I wanted to go into law school, and I figured, let's try to absorb as much information as possible about the law. It wasn't that law-centric, I would say. Like, in terms of content, there wasn't much that I found useful once I get to law school, but it definitely helped me develop a lot of, writing skills, research skills, critical thinking skills, which are all super useful if you plan on going to law school. So that was 2 years of my life, 2 years at Dawson College, and then I decided to apply to law school. Now, back in the day, my R score, which is a score that is used in CEGEP, was, I think, something like 31.3.5, something along those lines, and I applied to McGill, McGill University, and I applied to UDM, so Université de Montréal, or University of Montreal, if you're an English speaker. I did not get into McGill, but I did ended up getting into Université de Montréal, which I honestly did not really care. I was quite happy about that. And so once I got into Université de Montréal, that's when I basically started law school. So the law program at UDM is 3 years long. As I said, I enrolled straight from CEGEP. I know a lot of people decide to enroll into another university program and then go on to get their law degree. I know that's how it works in other provinces, and in the States you do an undergrad and then you go into law school, but I just went straight from CEGEP because I knew that's what I wanted to do, and I wanted to get out as fast as possible and be as young as possible at the end of my academic path. Now, a lot of the questions I got related to my time at UDM were about, whether I liked it or not, was it hard? And to be frank, I didn't find it particularly hard, but it definitely is a way of thinking and a way of studying and a way of writing exams that you need to get used to. It's definitely not the same as high school. It's definitely not the same as how you do things in CEGEP. So there's definitely a bit of a learning curve that you kind of just need to get through. But otherwise, I did enjoy my time at UDM. It was a little hard for me in the sense that I didn't find a lot of the classes interesting. So when you go to law school, at least in Quebec, you have like a set of mandatory classes, right? And so everyone has to take those classes, and those are usually, family law, criminal law, contracts, civil liability, constitutional law, just some core classes that everyone needs to take. And honestly, for the most part, I did not find those interesting at all. I just did not. And that was really hard for me because I knew that I liked law. I knew that I had an interest in law. I knew what types of law I was genuinely interested in. So for those who don't know, today I practice, corporate law, entertainment law, art law, fashion law, marketing law, and a bunch of other related branches of law. But you really don't get to see any of that when you go to law school, or at least not during the mandatory classes. And that was really hard for me because I have a really hard time caring when I do not enjoy something. And so it was definitely a little bit tough at first, just finding the motivation of getting through those mandatory classes. But once I got through those, I was actually able to pick optional classes, and that's where it got really, really interesting for me. So I was able to take intellectual property law, I was able to take copyright law in music, I was able to take entertainment law, information and communication law, just really interesting classes that allowed me to see whether or not I was actually interested in those fields. And I really, really did excel in those classes, and I could tell that it was just because I couldn't care less about the mandatory classes, but I actually had an interest in those optional classes that I took. So 3 years at Université de Montréal, got through the mandatory classes, got through the optional classes, which I absolutely loved. And then I went to bar school. Now, this is also a way in which Quebec is quite different when it comes to their educational system. And I know that in other provinces and in the States, you do study for the bar exam, but I'm pretty sure there's no such thing as a bar school. Whereas in Quebec, we have bar school. So we go to school, which is an entirely different school than law school. And then at the end of those 4 or 8 months, depending on the path that you decide to follow, then you pass the bar exam. But you cannot write the bar exam if you didn't go to bar school in the first place. So I graduated in, I think, May of 2016. That's when I graduated from Université de Montréal with my bachelor's degree in law. Then I applied to bar school, and I started bar school in August of 2016. Now, as I said, you can do bar school in 4 or 8 months. I decided to go for the 4 months program because, for a few reasons. As I said before, I wanted to be done as quickly as possible. The second reason why I did in 4 months is because the 8 months program isn't just the content of the 4 months program that is spread over 8 months. It's actually like an extra 4 months. So you have a first period of 4 months that you go through, and you don't have classes as often. Classes are shorter, and you don't have an exam at the end of those 4 months. They're really just like the prep courses. And then once you're done, you do the other 4 months, which is the only 4 months that I did. And because it wasn't a 4 month spread over 8 months, I figured why not just do the 4 months. And also the other reason why I didn't want to go through the 8 months program is because if you fail the 4 months program after the retake exam, so if you fail and then you retake the exam and you fail again, then you have to do the program in 8 months. And I thought to myself, there is no way in hell I'm going to do, if I fail, there's no way in hell that I'm going to do the 8 months for program and then do another 8 months after that. So I figured, at least if I failed, I'll have only done the 4 months program in the first place. So that's why I did it in 4 months. Now, bar school is a whole other creature. I really, really, really enjoyed bar school. I actually even enjoyed those classes or those subjects that I had taken in law school and those mandatory ones that I didn't care about, I actually ended up really liking them in bar school because the method of teaching was just completely different. When you go to bar school, it's very, very practical, whereas when you're in law school, it's just so theoretical. Everything is so theoretical. Answers and exams are just so long, whereas I felt like bar school exams and bar school teaching was very compatible with the way that my brain thinks, which is, this is a question, this is the answer, it's a straightforward answer. If you add more to it, it's probably going to be wrong, so short and sweet is the best. So I really liked bar school. Now the thing about bar school, a lot of people ask me, was bar school hard? Bar school isn't easy because you do have to absorb a lot of information in a very, very short period of time. And beyond that, I think that the hardest thing about bar school is just stress. If you are able to control the amount of anxiety that you feel, if you're able to get your stress under control, you will do extremely well in bar school. If you can't do that, I don't care how smart and how intelligent you are, you will probably fail bar school. So, as I said, I got into bar school in September of 2016. I wrote the bar exam in December of 2016, and I learned that I had passed the bar exam in January of 2017. When I was in bar school, I was actively looking for an articling position. I found one that was actually listed on the bar's website, on Quebec bar's website. It was an articling position at a tech company. I applied, I think, a bit before writing the bar exam, and the day that I learned that I had passed the bar exam was actually the day of my interview. I think it was a few hours before. And so when I was done with the bar exam, I articled at a tech company here in Montreal for 6 months. So it was me and the in-house counsel that was supervising me, and I did that for 6 months. And then I got called to the bar in July of 2017, which means that next month it's going to be 3 years that I've been a lawyer. So in July 2017, I became a lawyer, and in September of 2017, I decided to do my own thing and just start my own practice. All right, so now that you know what my academic path looked like, let's answer a few questions that I got on TikTok and on Instagram. Do you think getting a marketing degree before a law degree is a good idea? I actually got a lot of questions that were very similar to this. So do you think getting X degree before going to law school is going to be useful? And this is my point of view. I think there are a few things that you should be looking into if you do want to do another degree before going to law school, or if you have to. First thing would be to get a degree that is going to allow you to develop skills that are going to be very useful in law school and then when you become a lawyer. Public speaking skills, critical thinking, writing skills. I think any degree that is going to help you develop those skills is a really, really good option for an undergrad degree or just a degree that you want to take before going to law school. The second thing that I think you should be looking into is what type of law do you want to practice down the line. So if you're looking into practicing patent law, then a science degree would be a really good idea. If tax law is something that you're interested in, maybe accounting would be a good degree to get before going to law school. So I think that just thinking about the type of law that you want to practice, that you think you want to practice down the line, will definitely guide you in your choice. And third thing that I think you should be looking into is, what do you like? Lawyers have all types of interests, hobbies, and ways of thinking, and lawyers are ultimately very, very different one from another. If you can just find a degree that you really enjoy, that you're passionate about, and that you can get really, really good grades in, obviously to be able to enroll into law school, I think I think if you find one that is going to meet those criteria, I think that's the one that you should be picking. So, second question, is it hard to find a job as a lawyer after you finish university, and how long it took me to find a job after I got called to the bar? So this is my experience. I didn't have to go find a job after university because I decided to start my own law practice a few months after I got called to the bar. However, I can say from talking to other people that for a lot of them it did take quite a bit of time, just because there are so many lawyers in Quebec. If you live in Quebec and if you want to become a lawyer in Quebec, this is something that you're going to hear very, very often. There are a lot of us in Quebec. There are a lot of us more specifically in Montreal. And so it might take a bit of time for you to get a job and even for you to get an articling position, but I do think that at the end it's very, very worth it. And honestly, I do not know anyone that just really could not find a job at all after law school. Third question, what can you do in high school to get into law school? Honestly, unless you're in another province or in the States, you're so young when you're in high school and so far from getting into law school that, you know, as I said before, I think you should just focus on developing some crucial skills: writing skills, reading skills, critical thinking skills. I really think that's all you should be doing when you're in high school. Obviously, if you don't have to go to law school or to apply to an undergrad straight from high school. So, is it hard knowing a lot of data by heart? Now, this is a myth that I hear very, very often about law school. We don't have to learn anything by heart. Most of our exams, if I can recall correctly, are open book exams, which does not mean, and I repeat, it does not mean that they're easy. Open book exams are not easy, but when you're in law school or even in bar school, it really is more about knowing how to search through your notes and understanding core concepts. There really is no point in learning anything by heart in law school. I can't remember one time that was even useful to me. Can you describe the perfect typical lawyer? As I said before, lawyers are very different from one another, but if I can point out a few traits that I think you'll find in most lawyers, I would say most of them love research. Most of them are really passionate about the type of law that they practice. Most of them are very detail oriented. Most of them really enjoy writing and reading. I know a lot of people are going to expect me to say that lawyers love to argue, but it's not necessarily true. And if you don't enjoy arguing, then that doesn't mean that you cannot be a lawyer. And actually, I know a lot of people think that lawyers are extroverts. A lot of lawyers are extroverts, especially if you're the type of lawyer that goes to court. I personally do not go to court. That's a choice that I made a very long time ago. I figured out that I don't like going to court, and so I don't do it. And I definitely am an introvert, but just because you're an introvert doesn't mean that you can't be a very good lawyer, and it doesn't mean that you can't put yourself out there and be successful. It just means that, you know, being with people takes a bit more energy from you. Was it hard? Was it stressful? And did you have time for a job? Was it hard? I didn't find law school to be particularly hard, but I did find bar school to be harder because it was so stressful. I was really stressed during law school too, so I was stressed during the entire thing, but I am a very anxious person, so here we are. Did I have time for a job? I worked through law school. I didn't work when I was in bar school, but I did work through law school, and I worked for I think like 5 hours a week, sometimes 10 max on the weekends, but yeah, that was it. Do I have to be able to speak French? And then I also got, do I have to be able to speak in English? Now, I'm bilingual, or I'm actually trilingual, but French is my mother tongue. If you're in Quebec and you want to practice in Quebec, I will say that it is pretty damn essential that you know French. If you don't, or if you have a hard time with French, I would say work on that, because I think you will have a hard time practicing in Quebec. Now, when it comes to speaking English, obviously the official language here in Quebec is French, but I will say that speaking English is pretty crucial. If I just think about my law practice, I would say almost 50% of my clients are Anglophones, or prefer to speak English with me. And so while it might not be a requirement for you to become a lawyer, I do think that learning English is just going to open more doors for you. And if you live in Quebec right now and you want to become a lawyer and your English isn't up to par, once again, just get on it. Honestly, the more languages you know, the best is going to be for you, but French and English are basics. Do I have more chances of getting accepted into law with a bachelor's degree? And as I said, I didn't have a bachelor's degree when I got into law school, because at Université de Montréal it doesn't really make a difference, but I know that if you want to get into McGill, they only take a small amount of students who apply to law school straight from CEGEP. So most people who get into law school at McGill already have a bachelor's degree. If your plan is to go to McGill, you will have more chances of getting in if you already have a bachelor's degree, but I will say that you have to make sure that you can get really, really good grades in that bachelor's degree. It's a lot harder to get into law school from another bachelor's degree than it is to get into law school directly from CEGEP. What was the best part about studying law? That's actually a really good question. The best part about studying law, I think it was noticing how much we were surrounded by it, if it made sense. I have a distinct image of me being in intellectual property law class and learning about trademarks, and just realizing how we were surrounded by trademarks. And once I noticed that, I don't think I was ever able not to see trademarks everywhere. And today, because I do practice in that field, I do see trademarks everywhere. I think that was the best part about studying law. You learn so much about how society works that I can't see myself not having that knowledge today. Does that make sense? The things that I learned in law school were so valuable to me that I would be thankful for them even if I wasn't a lawyer today. Any tips for people who want to be a lawyer? Make sure you have really good grades in school. That's the first thing. Make sure that you are aware of what becoming a lawyer entails. I love suits as much as anyone else, but that's not what being a lawyer is. Regardless of the type of law that you practice, it's probably not going, it's not going to be as glamorous as what you see on TV. So I think just, talking to lawyers, talking to people who have studied in that field, and trying to understand what it actually means to be a lawyer, I think is going to be really helpful to you. Another thing, I think, explore as many hobbies and as many of your interests as possible. Your interests and your hobbies are going to help make you a better lawyer. How did you find the confidence to start your own law practice? Okay, so for those who don't know, I do have my own solo practice. I've always had my solo practice ever since I got called to the bar, but I think I'm going to make a distinct video about that. So how I started my legal practice, how I got clients in the first place, what it took for me to do this, the different steps that I followed. If this is something you're interested in, please like this video and leave me a comment so that I know that this is a video that you would like me to make, and I will make a video discussing everything related to how to start your own legal practice. Last question. How did I prepare in school for my exams? Now, as I said earlier, I am a very anxious person. I've always been very anxious. And it was definitely a little hard for me to handle all of that stress, but I do think that I developed really, really good techniques in terms of studying for my exams that helped me down the line. First tip I have for you, always read your law, whether that be your civil code, your civil procedure code, I don't care what law it is, your criminal code. You need to read the law, and you need to make sure that you actually understand the different articles from the law. That is the basics. Second thing that really helped me when I was studying was doing past exams. So when you're in university or even in bar school, you will have access to past exams. Do as many of those as possible. They will allow you to figure out what you actually do understand and what you don't understand, because it really is different when you study, your notes or the law, and that versus you actually taking the exam. So taking the past exams and the past exams is definitely going to help you figure out what you don't know, and it's going to help you figure out what to focus on. The third tip that I have for you, and I think this is very specific to me because I know that a lot of people did not follow this tip when they went to law school or bar school and still ended up doing fine, but it's getting enough sleep. I got an unbelievable amount of sleep when I was in law school and when I was in bar school. I actually remember in bar school, I had classes in the morning, and so I would go to school in the morning, I would come home, I would eat, I would nap, and then I would go study for the rest of the day, and then I would come back home and go to bed at a reasonable hour. Sleep is essential. I don't know how people survive without sleep. I don't know how people stay up all night to study. I can't do it. It doesn't work for me. And I also think it's not the ideal way of doing things. You need energy. You need a brain that has all of its cognitive capacities. You need a brain that can focus, a brain that can remember things, and you're going to have a really hard time having a brain that can do those things if you do not get a decent amount of sleep. So best study advice, aside from reading the law and listening in class and all of that stuff, you need to get some pretty decent sleep. So that was it for my Q&A video / how did I become a lawyer. Now, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. Maybe I'll have to make a part 2 to this, who knows, but if that's something that you want, I will do it. Please don't forget to like this video if you actually enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel for more related content. Bye guys.